can I welcome you, Russell, and everybody else for joining us this morning. So thank you very much. The event is being recorded, and if we could just make sure everybody who isn't presenting is on mute, and if we remove the cameras as well, it might save a little bit of bandwidth there. So Russell is widely acknowledged as a thought leader across all aspects of talent management and people strategy, from future of work, engagement, retention to belonging, and individual productivity. Russell's consulted and supported boards and leadership teams of many companies, from the FTSE 100 to Fortune 500 and SMEs, various sectors like technology, engineering, finance and hospitality. And he's done keynote talks to the likes of Vodafone and John Lewis as well. So he's described as one of business's influential speakers and one of the most inspirational. So I hope you'll enjoy today's event. Over to Russell.
Cool. Thank you very much. I will get the slides up in a minute because another technology issue. You don't need to know about that, but I always worry how I'm going to be introduced on these, because it could quite honestly be rapidly downhill from this point onwards. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for bearing with me as I get all the technology issues sorted. I've no idea why Teams wasn't working that way just now, but I'm on, which is cool. The talk that I was going to do today and was going to be done at the networking, the Tommy Flowers Institute conference that you had a couple of weeks ago, was one I gave earlier this year at the Local Enterprise Partnership session in Ipswich, where we had the COO of Suffolk Chamber Council. We had various schools, we had various companies, and everything to do with, hopefully the slides are now working. If they're not working, shout. Cool.
They're working.
Yeah, they're working. Yeah, cool.
Oh, it's just well getting better every minute of the day, isn't it? So this is a talk I gave earlier this year at the Local Enterprise Partnership event in Ipswich in January. One of your colleagues saw it and liked it, and so invited me to come to your conference. That, of course, was COVIDized, if that's even a verb. And so now we're doing it as a webinar. Thank you for being with me. So as Sarah said, I work with businesses of all shapes and sizes to help create and deliver people strategies. I help businesses with their people, culture, to deliver change. Today, one aspect of what I do is I look at the future of work, and that's what I'm going to look at today. It's one of a series of talks that I do, I give, I deliver, I support, I challenge businesses, I inspire businesses to think differently on people. Briefly, I'm going to look at work, consider what it means, look at how long we're going to have to do it for. This is all bad news, by the way, and actually how we can protect ourselves and our career. I will briefly consider the trends that are playing out in the world. I will show you then how, as employees, we need to respond in order to be successful. I'm going to forward wind 3, 4, 5 years to try and see what trends are playing out. This is the interesting one. It's the slightly scary one. It's the kind of reassuring one as well in some ways. This is an abridged version of a talk I have. Today will last about 45 minutes, might be slightly over because we delayed start, apologies. This is the abridged version. The full-length version looks at how businesses can future-proof themselves and how people can future-proof themselves. Today I'm going to focus on the people aspects, okay? So we all know in the recent situation, we all know the pace of change is consuming. Justin Trudeau summed it up really neatly 2 years ago at Davos, where he said, the pace of change has never been this fast. And it will never be this slow again. Yeah, a great soundbite, and he's dined out on that soundbite for a couple of years, but it's true. We know the world is changing, and in the midst of a pandemic, you only have to see how true that is. How in 6 weeks we have gone from what was normal and a normality to something completely new and a new normal. And I suspect, and there's an interesting conversation to be had for another time, how that will evolve, what will that will impact. They're already talking about the COVID generation as the next label: Boomer, X, Millennial, Z, COVID, and so on. So we know the world is changing. It's changing far faster than we realize. I'll spend the next 40 minutes looking at what's going on, what this means for people, how it'll impact things. This is a macro view, okay? So broadly, if you think about work for a moment, work is a scary aspect. We spend 1/3 of our awake time doing it. It dominates our lives. It defines us. You know, whenever you meet anyone new, first 3 questions you are asked, I will guarantee, are, what's your name? Who do you work for? What do you do? And those answers define you. It's one of the most defining aspects of our lives. It can drive us to succeed. It can motivate us, create, socialize. It can drive us to utter exasperation and frustration, unvalued, unloved. Maybe the most scary aspect about work, how long we're going to have to do it for. Here comes all the good news. Front page of the Telegraph. Can't afford to retire. This is pre-COVID, and that's blown holes in pension plans, etc. 2 years ago, Aviva said that the typical middle-aged worker, by which they probably mean me, has retirement savings of £54,000. That would get you an annual pension of £3,000 a year. If you want a minimum wage pension, your pension pot needs to be about £250,000. 24% of millennials, that's those broadly aged 25 to 35, think they will never, ever retire. They can't buy a house. How are they going to save for a pension? Now, I'm 50. I know I don't look it, it's because I'm worth it. But the somewhat depressing truth is that I have as long left in work, 25, 30 years, as I have been in work. If you are 30, you have 45 to 50 years of work left. Consider what that means. I've been in work for 30 years, since I was broadly 20. Quickly rewind. 10 years ago, I know it's 12, 13 years ago, October 2007 is when the iPhone came out. Facebook was 2006. 10 years ago, there's no Siri, there is no Alexa, there is no App Store, there is no Netflix, there is no iPlayer. Goodness only knows how we survived. 20 years ago, that is called the internet, or it looks something like this. Dial up and then see if you can possibly connect, and you get 20 bits per second or something. 30 years ago, that was a top of a range Apple computer, and you were lucky if you had one of those. Alternatively, you might have had one of those. That's how much work has changed in my lifetime, and I have as long left in work. Our children, my 9-year-old, we are preparing her for a 50 to 60 year career. She is 9, I am 50. She has a greater likelihood of reaching 100 than I do, and I'm halfway there. So that's work and the scary side. The other scary aspect is the second most quoted work-related stat today. Chief Economist, Bank of England, robots threaten 15 million jobs. No one's connecting those two things together. How can I have a career for 30 years, and believe you me when I say I've become very accustomed to my standard of living and my salary and so forth, if robots are going to end up doing everything within 10 years? How can that possibly be compatible? There's a fascinating stat here. Everyone believes robots will take over jobs. According to Pew Research, 2/3 of American workers absolutely believe automation will replace human jobs. Yet, in the same survey, 80% of American workers think it's your problem, not mine, because no one could possibly automate what I do, but you are in a world of pain. They can't both be right. It's all up in the air. It's happening at once. It's happening to all of us. And from any perspective, we need to understand what's happening. Edward de Bono said, if you can't predict the future, and no one can, if I could predict the future and pick 6 numbers, I would not be here right now. We've got to be flexible. We've got to be prepared to cope with what will happen, come what may. So this is about understanding, being prepared, if you like. This is the structure I'll follow. To understand the future, we need to understand what's going on in the world today. We need to understand the trends that are impacting, shaping, and changing the world, because they will form the foundation of what will come next. Once we know the trends, once we know how the world will change, we can answer the important question, so what? What does that mean to employees who want meaningful jobs? And then we get some Q&A and so forth. So there are broadly 6 trends playing out in the world. Disrupting the current, defining the future. Each of those 6 on its own would rank amongst the largest economic forces the world has seen, each surpassing the Industrial Revolution. These are all happening at once, amplifying, feeding off one another, producing monumental change in their wake. And you know these. You know these, you just might not know them as starkly. I'll give you some stats to show you what's going on, because I haven't the time to go through all of these 6, but we know urbanization, mega cities, people moving from a rural environment to an urban environment. Every year for the last decade, a population equivalent to the UK has moved from a rural environment to an urbanized environment. People moved to cities for centuries. Dick Whittington started the trend, but when people move from rural to urban, they become integrated with the global economy. Technology, you know more than most what technology is doing, Moore's law and so forth. Demography, we're living older, we're broadly more healthy than before. Globalization, discuss. Climate's going to be interesting, because the only way we're going to solve climate is with a global solution, and we're having a foretaste of how challenging that can be with a COVID global solution. And politics, just discuss. But let me give you 6 or so stats to show you what's going on in the world to understand what's happening. That's Beijing's new airport. In that 5-year period, 2010 to 2015, China built 55 airports. 55. President Narendra Modi tweeted last October that India built 35 in a 4-year period. In the UK, we might manage a runway, the first one in a century, if we finally get around to doing it. This is causing monumental change. The cheapest way to fly to Australia now, certainly when I last looked, from the UK, is not via Dubai, it is via China. They are now the connector hubs, and that is playing out with Emirates and Etihad already looking at a potential merger. You probably know or have heard of Bitcoin. One person described Bitcoin as, or defined Bitcoin as, everything you don't know about finance, coupled with everything you don't know about technology. Bitcoin is mined using data centers. You solve highly complex equations to get the rights to create the next link in the blockchain. These data centers use a lot of electricity. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of computers all humming away. The amount of electricity used to mine Bitcoin annually is equivalent to that used by the country of Austria. This is not an eco-friendly currency. First Space Agency to successfully, at their first attempt, put a satellite into orbit around Mars was not America, Japan, China, or the EU. Schiaparelli and Beagle showed that one. It was India, and they did it for less than the cost of the movie Gravity. Frugal innovation, creating something amazingly complex on the cheap. And who is the largest producer of hydrocarbons in the world? This has been playing out recently with the recent spat between Saudi Arabia and Russia, pumping oil, the OPEC cartel coming together, agreeing production cuts of 10%. They actually need to go to 35%. Brent crude collapsing in price, Texas crude. Actually, I will pay you to take it off my hands. The largest producer of hydrocarbons in the world is not Saudi Arabia. They're the third largest. They had the cheapest cost of extraction, broadly $4 a barrel. The country with the most proven reserves is Venezuela. It's just very, very expensive to get to. The second largest producer is Russia. In a word, sanctions, trying to get dollar currency into the country. The largest producer of hydrocarbons in the world, the largest producer of oil in the world is America. Again, in a phrase, fracking, because fracking is incredibly nimble. As soon as the price goes up, they uncap the wells and pump a load, and as soon as it goes down, they cap it. It's America. Has been since about 2011, by the way. We just don't realize it. Final one. Global center of mobile money, where your phone's your bank account, where 40% or transactions equivalent to 40% of the country's GDP go through a mobile phone system. Not America, it's not Europe, it's not China, it's Kenya, it's M-Pesa. It is phenomenal. As I said, 40% of the GDP goes through that system annually. They are rolling it out across the developed world. They put it into Afghanistan 18 months ago. They are paying all the civil servants with it. Most of them thought they'd had a pay rise. No, it removed corruption at a stroke. Because what used to happen in payment terms is, in the army, the general got the money, who skimmed, who passed it down to the majors, who skimmed, who passed it down to the sergeant majors, who skimmed, and down to the privates. Installed this, removed that at a stroke. Phenomenal. That's what's going on. Kind of know it, kind of realize it. I've done it quickly to show you the points. The important point, though, important question to answer is, so what? What does that mean to work and our future lives as employees? And here I've got 7 points for you. First up is, we will increasingly become work nomads. The nature of how we are engaged will change. Interconnectedness, globalization, and we can discuss that slightly off context in terms of what's playing out politically and with pandemics, but it's uncertain. I think we can all agree that. In uncertain times, businesses scale back. They scale back by not investing. One way they won't invest is in new hires. So who's doing any permanent hiring at the moment? Answer, not many people. But work still needs to be done. So to get stuff done, but to maintain flexibility, companies will respond by using less permanent resource and far more temporary resource, contractor resource. And this trend from permanent long-term engagement of work to temporary short-term PAYE, temps, limited company contractors is well underway. COVID will exacerbate it and amplify this. This is data from Staffing Industry Analysts, one of the global recruitment industry bodies. Their analysis said in 2008, 8% of the average company's workforce was non-perm. By 2016, it was 20%. By this year, it will be 25%. The trend is clear. Non-permanent contract is on the increase. Now, I'm not saying there won't be perm jobs. Far, 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 far from that. I'm just saying it's going from 92.8 and becoming more and more equal. The economy will drive this. Now, the gig economy is interesting because people miss elements of this. During the Industrial Revolution, Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, looked at the manufacturing process of making a pin. He identified 18 discrete steps in that process. And he worked out there are 2 ways of doing it. You could hire generalists who do all 18 steps. So they start with a lump of ore and end up with pins. Or you could hire specialists, each of which do one of those 18 steps. And by hiring specialists, he increased and showed you increased productivity 5 times. This is how Henry Ford made a Model T Ford every 36 seconds, because he broke the manufacturing process up into discrete steps. And each of us have a defined specialist job. I'm going to put the front driver's wheel on. You're going to put the front passenger wheel on. You're going to put the back driver's wheel on. And that's what you do 40 hours a week. It's a great job. That's it. You break it into discrete steps. That's how you get productivity boosts. Technology will increasingly allow white collar work to be split into component parts, discrete work packages, gigs, allowing companies to choose how each is delivered. And technology also allows, and this is economics speak, you lower the transactional cost of using an outsider. What that means is, here I am in my office in Sevenoaks presenting to you. I don't have to physically be with you. I could access your systems. I could be in Mumbai. Doesn't matter. Very effective way of outsourcing. And this trend of using specialists, again, well underway. This is Upwork, a platform that links qualified white-collar workers with companies who want to engage a specialist for a discrete task. If you want to hire someone, these are the kind of things you can get. Very, very simply, in business, there's a lot of work, actually in business and personally, actually, a lot of work we do that actually, at the end of the day, I don't care who does it. I don't care where it's done. I don't really care when it's done. I want it done by a point in time, delivered to me Friday morning, 9 o'clock, and I want it done to an acceptable quality. And I'm willing to pay something for it. That's a gig. Now, gigs have been around for centuries. Getting your haircut's a gig. And we're all going to need that, seeing as we can't get it done for 8 weeks. It's going to be an interesting video call in a couple of weeks' time. Getting your accounts done is a gig. Getting a law firm engaged is typically a gig. It's transactional work. Gigs have been around for centuries. It's just technology amplifies the trend. The other things technology does is it changes the nature of pay. And this is the interesting thing people miss. Notice, if I'm a permanent employee, I've sold my soul for 40 hours a week. The only question left is how much? What will you pay me for that? Gigs are output-based remuneration. I will deliver you a talk on the future of work. Doesn't matter how much research, how long it takes to build it, build the PowerPoint, present it. I will do it transactionally for a fixed, mutually agreeable cost. That's it. Changes the nature of pay. The other interesting thing is, when it does that, the better you are, the more you will earn. Easy example. Go back to this slide. A fast cyclist will earn more money as a deliverer than a slow cyclist. Gigs change pay. They change the nature of how we're engaged, and the better you are, the more efficient you are at what your gig you are delivering is, the more you will earn. This will fry our minds as parents and appear entirely natural to our children. But the trend is clear. It will drive tremendous flexibility. You want to earn some more money at the weekend? Got a car? Be an Uber driver. Way. You're a specialist in marketing at the weekend? Get a gig. And it will fry our minds as parents. Second trend, technology. Now, this is the slightly scare story one. Technology will kill jobs. It will democratize work. It will not just stop at packaging work up. It will democratize it, and we will love it when it's happening. This is the famous, infamous, delete as applicable research. Osborne and Frey, 2013 was the initial output. where they looked at over 700 job types, pumped them through, ironically, a load of artificial intelligence, but they pumped the jobs through a load of equations to see what the probability of automation would be in the next 2 decades. There's a snapshot of it taken from The Economist. This is where that figure of 47% comes from. There's a broad swathe if you look at all job types. By the way, 47% was broadly good news. That was the US economy. Our economy, the number was 39%. Our economy has 4 more creative roles in it, marketing, advertising, and so forth. The news for China, 77% of jobs at risk of automation, broadly manufacturing. Now, you'll notice accounting, penultimate one on this list, massively high risk of automation. Any of you who watched the BBC series Years and Years, which was last year, will have seen that play out. In that series, the 2 main protagonists, husband and wife, were accountants. And the episode set broadly in 2028. The wife said to the husband, "They've made me redundant. They found software that cost £200 to replace me for life. There's no such thing as accountant anymore. We've joined the list of jobs that no longer exist." And it's easy to see why. Accountants, and I'm simplistically now, anything that follows a linear process, definable, codable, logical, predictable, will be automated. And simplistically for accountants, my tax return, how much is my income, what are my outgoings, what are my benefits, what are my charitable donations, take one away from the other, there's your answer, job done, automate it. Now, we'll love it whilst it's happening. But consider, take a step back from all the noise and the hype. Consider what's going on. This is an American worker in a naval shipyard. They wear these exoskeletons to help them with their job. Prior to wearing the skeleton, the work was characterized by having to carry around those tools, really heavy, tens of kilograms. Physically, really demanding work. Quality of work was broadly okay, but you're gonna quick, rivet it, kind of thing. Hard work, physically demanding, quality of life, rubbish. When you got home from work in the evening, all you could do was crash out. They were taking significantly more sick days than the average worker, and so on. Now, wearing the exoskeleton, tools appearing weightless. You guide the tool rather than having to carry it. Prevents injuries. You can't drop it on your foot anymore. They had taken a lot less sick. Their quality of life immeasurably improved. And 2 people wearing the suits are 3 people more productive than without. We will marvel at the technology, what it will do to us. Look at what it's done to them. That is fantastic, what it's happened. Yet it slowly destroys jobs. Closer to home, that's Walmart Dixon, helping builders move around heavy packages on building sites. But again, take another step back. What is actually going on here? Technology is the great leveler. Technology removes your uniqueness. It removes the advantage you had in getting the job. It dumbs the job down. And so it democratizes work. That job, the American naval shipyard worker, used to be characterized. How did you get the job? What characteristics did you have? What did you have to show in an interview? You had to be butch, fit, able to carry tools of 20 kilograms at a time, stand up all day for 8 hours and so forth. Now, wearing the exoskeleton, who can do the job? Anyone. It's removed their uniqueness. Excel dumbs down doing accounts. PowerPoint dumbs down creating presentations. It opens talent pools up that you've never considered. And this will upend selection tools used by most businesses. How do you choose the right person now? Because historically you'd have chosen someone butch. But now, how do you choose it? But technology also creates and enables other types of work. When ATMs were installed in banks, everyone feared for the job of the cashier. And absolutely, if your dream job was to sit there and go, would you like that in 10s or 5s? Then that job's gone. The ATM destroyed it. But banks employed more people after the introduction of ATMs than before. They moved those people, the cashiers, into what they consider to be higher value occupations, sales and customer service. So technology opens up more jobs as well. This leads slightly into the next one. As work becomes democratized and everyone can do it, companies will have to increasingly embrace different talent pools, not just old ones, not just youth, but completely different and a simplistic one. Here come the women. Over 60% of graduates in the UK today are female. 64% across the OECD are female. And yet I consider, when I work with businesses and you look at their corporate websites, their policies on how to attract different talent pools, how do they attract and resonate in these pools? Construction's a great example. Look at a construction industry website and you'll see lots of pictures of blokes in hats. Well, that's just alienated 2/3 of your graduates. Well done. There was a Harvard Business Review article recently, and you can Google this. The article was part of their question the researchers. So it's literally, they went to the researchers and the research and went, is this true? What's happening? What are you really saying here? And the article was entitled, Question, how do you make a team more intelligent? Their answer, add a woman. How do you attract different talent pools and make yourself useful and open to us? And this is already playing out. Women write better code. Analysis done on GitHub of over 1.4 million users. They found code written by women was far more likely to be accepted than code written by men once you removed any identification feature of gender. At the other end of the scale, consider jobs that are hard to automate. Therapists, care workers, creative, teachers, nurses, roles broadly and simplistically that require empathy. To be blunt, a lot of the roles that will be automated are typically male orientated. In this book, some of the research you have to do is ridiculous. The end of MEM. The author noted, Hannah noted, of the 30 occupations expected to grow the fastest in coming years, women dominate 20. The World Economic Forum put women's economic power as the second biggest employment disruptor behind youth. This leads into the fourth one, because part of this, why it's important with women, is the skills. Fourth element, what skills will we need in the future? Well, any job is going to need to understand computers, and that's not a massive insight. World Economic Forum has said science, technology, engineering, maths will see the majority of new roles created. I was with the partner of the chief legal counsel for one of the biggest computer software companies in the world 2 weeks ago. They, and they'll be nameless for reasons that are fairly obvious, they are already saying that they don't need to hire computer programmers anymore because that can be automated. Maths, architecture, engineering, other strategic specialist roles, competition for talent will be fierce. Renewables, climate change, healthcare, medical, fierce competition. If you look at the Home Office's list of skills where they will allow work permits for foreigners to come into the UK, there's about 112 on there. I looked at it 3 weeks ago. I was doing some research on it. In there is all the obvious skills. STEM, yes. Architecture, yes. Engineering, yes. Construction, yes. Healthcare, yes. Number 107, librarian. No one would guess that would be on scarce skills. Rough rule of thumb, 60% of jobs 10 years from now have not been invented today. So you can't ask your kids what they want to be when they grow up. It's an irrelevant conversation. But you can look at the strengths and skills that the successful workers of tomorrow will have. And this is from the World Economic Forum data. Top 10 skills businesses will need by this year. Now,
Very, very simplistically, they fall into two categories. On the one hand is problem solving, thinking, creativity. And on the other hand, people skills, people management. Reasonably obvious why. Technology, AI, automation, machine learning will take over jobs that can be codified, where the process is linear, where the accountancy, add this, take that, do that, then this, and then repeat. A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E, those jobs will go. Businesses will not need process followers. Machines will do that. Rather, businesses will need the skills that smart machines cannot copy. And they fall into those two areas. The first is this creativity, innovation, thinking, solving problems, finding the hidden meaning in things, visualization, thinking in your feet, the ability to respond to unique circumstances. I was doing a talk at CIMA, Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, last year, and talking about accountants, and I've shown you the data, their roles are going to go. So their value is not in the calculation. Their value is in the understanding. Their value is in the so what it means in order to help make better businesses' decisions. And that's what this critical thinking is. A slight aside, you've all known about STEM. You may have seen the morphing of STEM to STEAM, because STEM was totally left brain focused. We need the right brain creativity to make it work. And to go back to that global software company I was talking about, they are not looking for software coders anymore. That's being automated. What they need is the creative people, the thinkers, the people that can visualize, the artists, the storytellers, and so on. The second set of skills is the people skills. Getting you lot to work together effectively. Staff are broadly the single biggest expense for most businesses. The World Green Building Council says broadly 90% of all business costs are people related. So getting you to be just 1% more productive would have a massive impact on the bottom line. So how do I get you to form, norm, the ability to engage with people from different backgrounds, different experiences, social intelligence, emotional IQ will become even more important to get people to work effectively together and produce and create. And the fascinating thing with these two things, how do you hire that? How do you hire someone with those skills? According to one of LinkedIn's founders, 1/3 of the desired core skill sets of most occupations will be comprised of skills that are not considered crucial today. Google data, and I love Google because they do loads of analytics, they have said academic performance does not predict job performance beyond the first 2 years after leaving college. So saying must have a degree is a complete irrelevance, doesn't predict anything. This is where diversity comes into play. Too many companies treat diversity as a tick box exercise. It's not. It's diversity of thought that we need, diversity of background, diversity of experience, and a sense of belonging so that I can use that experience. Companies will struggle with this. If those are the core hires you will need, the core skills you will need, how do you select and find it? As individuals, how do we stand out? Fifth point, average is over. There's going to be competition for staff is going to be global. If gigs are coming, there's always going to be someone cheaper than you, somewhere in the world, maybe better. So how can individuals respond? Don't be average. Being average is no longer going to be enough. You're going to have to be specialist, have depth of expertise. This is from London Business School, Linda Grattan's work. She calls it serial mastery. Embrace the T and have serial mastery. So have an awareness of where you fit into the broad business and societal ramifications. Know what you are and be the best. Do not be average. Be the best. Mine it. Keep going. And then when technology comes and removes that uniqueness, dumbs it down, means most people can do the job, morph into aligned verticals, and then keep going, never stop, because you'll be caught up. By training, I'm an engineer. I was sponsored by BT for my first degree, eons ago. Electrical and communication engineering. My first career was designing mobile networks around the world. Paris was lovely in the autumn. I managed 500 million rollout in Austria, a team of 50 engineers, and so on and so on and so forth. Now I lecture on HR issues. Go figure. But you morph as things go. Lifelong learning will be critical. It's been a truism since I was this tall, but it will only become more and more true. And this will be a step change for our generations. My father's generation was born, kind of the pinky bit at the top of the graph, education for maybe 10 years, one job, one company, early retirement, hero to zero, overnight at the age of 55. That'll never happen again. Our careers, we'll come in, we'll get skills and then slow a decline into retirement. Maybe trying to take non-execs, consulting roles, not going from 5 days a week to 0, but 5, 4, 3, as we slowly go into retirement. Our kids will have 6 jobs at once, taking career breaks, coming in, learning, exploiting, learning, exploiting, learning, exploiting, and so forth. As I said earlier, it will fry our minds as parents and be entirely normal to them because they multitask on anything. You consider this from an employer's perspective, just quickly. Portfolio careers will come to the norm. I'm an engineer and now an HR. How does that work? People will be multitasking. People's loyalty will be to their career, to their profession, to their expertise. It won't be to the business they work for. Managers may be used to reject candidates who have job hopped. You might not have to embrace that now, especially given the lack of qualified talent that will be available. This leads to the next point. How do you protect your career? How do you have a career that lasts? Well, lifelong learning is one aspect. The second is have a brand. Jeff Bezos said, personal brand is what people say about you after you've left the room. So really quite simply, if you want to beat the competition, why should I pick you? What is it about you that makes it so special that I should choose you to give a talk to BT on the future of work? Why you? If you consider craftspeople from medieval times, consider Antiques Roadshow. Someone's lumped in a chest of drawers and the expert is walking up with the owner, and from 10 feet away, that was probably made 1650, banks of the Trent. How do you know that? Because there's a swirl, there's a mark, there's an identifying feature of the master craftsman. Craftspeople of medieval times had a uniqueness to their work that meant it stood out, that meant people realized it's yours. So what's your mark? What's your swirl? What's your value add? Why you? Workers will increasingly need to build, maintain, and protect their brand, much like businesses do today. We'll need to be recognized, seek endorsements, star ratings, feedback from previous work and gigs we've done. This is from Upwork. Think TripAdvisor, merge it with LinkedIn, forward wind 5 years. I've no idea who Sanjit is, but she gets 4.8, so yeah, I'll pick her. Technology will enable this, because going forward we'll be swamped by data, but you'll be increasingly be able to see and show and demonstrate the impact you had on the data, because everything's going to be measured. That will all become part of your brand. You know, it's the graphic designer on the tube with their big sheaf of all their artwork under their arms. What's yours? Why you? What have you done? And the final point would be, we need a network. We'll individually need a network. We do too many things ourselves. We're each going to be in our T, in our vertical, in our specialism, mining it. This means we'll need a network to support us, of skills that amplify and resonate with what we do, so that we can build teams out of complementary skills. Consider how films are made today. A film is made, unless it's Avengers, obviously, because it doesn't work in this one, but a film's so the director, the actress, the actor, the studio, the scriptwriter, the editors, everyone comes together, the money, the studio all come together, deliver the project, and then go their separate ways. Maybe they work together again, maybe they don't, doesn't matter. They need a network, come together, deliver projects, and then go. Your skills as a master craftsman, will be as important as your skills at building and maintaining your network. How you network might be based on themes, interests, colleagues, people from university, networks outside, whatever. But you'll need a network to support you. So, I've shown you the trends. That's how the future will play out. That's how all of us as individuals will need to or have to respond. That's the impact it will have on our children. Now, you may not be able to focus on all of these, but the first step in any journey is to try and prepare and have some awareness. So at least I hope I've made you aware of what is coming and what is important, so you can consider how to future-proof your career. We need to embrace this to future-proof ourselves. Now, as scary as some of this might sound, it's where the trends are going. And in reading, researching, writing, and presenting this, I do realize it can sound a bit like this, crazy guy in the street corner. And maybe it is to an extent, but the world is changing, and it's changing far faster than we realize. And our recent experience that we're still living through and may do for some time to come just proves that. Change is coming, and if we wait until it arrives, it will be too late. Now, a couple of things, just finally finishing off, is one, I don't have all the answers. Of course I don't. But hopefully I've highlighted a way. I've shown you where it's already happening, and for me that's an important point. I've shown you the trends, I've shown you what's going on, and I've shown you where it's already taking place, so I've helped you be prepared because I've proved to you where it's taking place. Secondly, I guarantee you'll reflect on this at some point. Over the next week, you will see, hear, read, speak to someone about something, and you'll reflect back on this presentation. And the third thing I guarantee is it is not going to be boring. So just finishing up, my contact details are there should you wish to get in touch, email address and phone number. If you'd like to know any more, please drop me a line. Please, I would appreciate your feedback. After all, as I said, I need to build my brand. You will find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Russell Beck, ImagineThinkDo. That's the company name. Very happy to take questions now, or post them to me afterwards, and we can do it through Sarah, because I realise there's a lot of people on the call. Take it however you want. Thank you very much. Hope that was useful. And I think we started 7 minutes late, so I finished spot on time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Russell. That was fantastic. If anyone would like to raise any questions, please feel free to come off mute or raise it in the chat box.
Hi Sarah, it's Gavin from Technology.
Hello.
Less of a question, but more of an observation for us, that it almost feels implied that education and skills acquisition sort of happens as it does today. What I like to kind of muse about is that what if we get the same level of automation in our careers, such that we only end up selecting, the job we want to do, and our skills, qualifications, experiences are all mapped out for us, and we just respond to that. And our careers are shaped in a way that protects us against the automation and the changes that go on in the marketplace. Do you think that's possible?
I think, let me think how to answer that. Can I answer that? I think there's a couple of angles on that, if I can. I consciously steered clear of societal ramifications in this, because I think that's a massive area that I probably can't do service to, and I don't know sufficiently. But to answer the question slightly tangentially, before COVID, unemployment in the UK was 3.8%. Goodness only knows what it will go to now, maybe 10, maybe higher. When it's at 3.8%, you are broadly at full employment, which basically means anyone who wants a job can get one. If it goes to 10%, who is going to be that 6.2 that are going to lose their jobs? Is it going to be and I'm going to be brutal to make the point and do it for brevity. Okay, so apologies, I don't mean it as brutally as I'm going to say. I just realised time passes. So are the people going to be losing their jobs going to be the degree qualified, surgeons, lawyers, financiers, programmers, technology people, etc., or is it going to be hospitality? We're going to automate the warehouses because we can't get social distancing in them. All the restaurants are gone. High street people are gone, etc. There's something called the Matthew effect. It comes from the gospel. Jesus said, "To those that have, even more shall be given. To those that have nothing, even the little that have shall be taken away." And I think that is true of skills. I think people with skills, define skill, talent, however is relevant to the conversation. Those that have will always be in demand. Those that don't will struggle. McKinsey research in the States showed that people's whose highest level of educational attainment in the US was a high school diploma, which I believe is broadly an A-level. In the year 2000, you had a 2 in 3 chance of having a job. Today, it's 1 in 2, because those jobs are being automated. So I think a roundabout way of, if I've interpreted your question correctly, a roundabout answer is having skills absolutely helps and is a predicator of having employment. I think you've got to increasingly go forward when we consider skills globally, because increasingly competition will be global for people. Being the best in your tea, knowing what you are, having a brand and so on become more important in order to get you chosen for doing the job. That's a slight ramble. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, it does. It does. Thank you.
Interesting question, though. Yeah.
Any other questions at all for Russell?
Hi, Russell. It's Andrew Corsten, also from Technology. Just really kind of your comments and thoughts about what I'm just about to say. So many years ago, as you say, when we all had the technology revolution and computers came on, people talked about there'll be a paperless office and there wouldn't be enough work because of all the computerization. And in fact, as the point you've just made, we actually now have sort of technically full employment. So with the kind of the onset of automation, does that automatically mean that the premise will hold true that with all the automation coming, that there will be high levels of unemployment?
And I mean, technology, that conversation goes back to Henry Ford Jr. There's a famous interaction with Henry Ford Jr. and I think it was Walter Reuther. I can't remember his surname, but it began with R. Let's call him Reuther. Henry Ford Jr. is showing Walter around his factory. Walter was the head of the automobile union, one of the most powerful unions in America. And Junior is showing Walter around the factory going, oh, look at all these robots. It's great, isn't it? Yeah, tell me, how are you going to get fees out of that lot? And Walter Reuther turned around and went, yeah. And how are you going to get those robots to buy your cars? You know, this conundrum with technology has gone on since the Luddites for centuries and so on. Will technology, automation stop mass employment? I think technology is interesting. The fear 3 or 4 years ago was that technology would absolutely destroy jobs. It's a one-way street. Strap yourselves in for a world of pain. I think over the last 3 or 4 years, that has become far more nuanced. And actually, the increasing impression is that technology will augment our jobs. It will remove the repetitive administrative tasks or the repetitive tasks that we do in our jobs, freeing us up to do the creation, the thinking. So already AI, IBM's Watson, is better at identifying dark spots on cancer, on X-rays for potential cancer patients than the best surgeons in the world. Because that's a repetitive process. There it is. No, clear. Oh, yeah, that's one. Yeah, it's a repetitive process. DARPA, the US military R&D arm, in 2016 built a computer program with an avatar that was better at diagnosing PTSD in their workforce, i.e. the army returning from Iraq, than a human. And I was with the NHS. I've shown that to the NHS. And I was with all the practitioners, all the heads of delivery of services, and you can imagine what they do. Rah, that could never happen. And I said, you've missed the point, because you've missed the point as to what is important and what comes next. Do people go into healthcare, NHS, to look at X-rays, or do they go into care? So it's skills, different skills that play out. The empathy, the human side will become more and more important because it will free people up to do things. You know, it'd be no surprise, Sarah sent out the invite for this. It goes into our calendars and block it. Well, you know, in a week's time, we could send out an invite to a meeting. Sorry, this isn't going to work given the current crisis, but go with the flow. Yeah, you've been invited to a meeting in London. The computer, it comes in, it puts it in your diary, it realizes you've got to go to London, it knows where you live, it books your train ticket, it puts it in your calendar, it works out your travel time, all the way through. Yeah, that could be easily be done, easily automated. So I think it ties in with the earlier comment that I think skills, you need skills, know what you are, why you, what's so good about you, why should I hire you, and keep developing, keep learning, and you will find it easier to keep in employment. If you let skills atrophy or you don't have an education, then it's going to be increasingly harder.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been a really interesting talk, so thank you for your time.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, have we got time for one more question?
Sarah, I've got a question. It's Joseph.
Hello.
Hi,
Go ahead.
Thank you. Russ, it's Joseph at MVine. We're one of the Innovation Martlesham companies.
Hello.
Okay, so how can I phrase this? From generalist into specialist and then back into generalist? Or are we saying from generalist into specialist and then add specializations, multiple specializations? What's the best way forward?
Option 2, I would suggest. Generalist, specialist, add specializations. I mean, that's a very broad, actually, let me rephrase. I think it's relative to what you're trying to do, what industry you're in, what level you're at as well. Sorry. But I would probably say generalist to specialist and add specializations. So it's interesting, and I can probably only really realistically talk from a personal perspective, but I simplistically explain my career. Engineer, masters through research, design mobile networks, moved into managing talent teams, HR, fine. What is interesting and what my USP, if you like, is, what I'm told that people like, is my engineering approach to data analysis, research. It's not opinion, it's data backed up, it's supported by data to reinforce an argument on why things should change and how we can make them better. So I think all the things you do add and become part of that brand and why you, and become specialisms that you add to what you do. I guess the trick is working out what they are, because you might not know them all. You know, it took me a while to realize, actually, why do people give out their time to talk to me? Yeah, listen to me. Yeah, why me? Maybe you can answer that. I don't know. But it's finding out, actually, what is it? What is your uniqueness? And it's interesting. In a lot of work I do with businesses, you know, occasionally I get to see CVs, and a lot of CVs don't say why you. You turned up to work 220 days last year. So what? What changed? What moved? What adapted? X%? Y there? Z there? So what? What would have happened if you hadn't turned up? Anyone notice the difference? Yeah, I don't know. It's those kind of questions that we need to answer, and that individuals need to answer to identify what their unique value is.
That's great. Thanks, Russell. I can really relate to the brand stuff I've been doing on some personal development, and I can recommend some books after this. But there was one lady, QB Springer, who has She Builds Brand, and that's a fantastic way. It takes you through lots of different steps and processes to bring exactly what you've been discussing about thinking about your uniqueness. So it's excellent. Thank you very much. I think we'd better close there. And again, thank you for your time, everybody. There will be the recording after the event available, so please feel free to share that with your colleagues. So thank you very much.
And if you've got any questions, any comments, please send me an email.